doctor. That's more like it.
The Doctor Who conventions in Philadelphia are one of the best in the country. We get more people in here, and there's so much electricity in the air, it's amazing.
The reason I came to this convention today is, well, first of all, my parents don't quite understand Doctor Who in general, and it's nice to be in an atmosphere where you can be welcomed, and basically people just come around and say, "Hello, Doctor, so wonderful to see you." And I say, "My goodness, Sarah, where have you been?" And make new friends this way.
There's a lot of paraphernalia available between books and magazines, and you can learn a lot and enjoy it, and be with a lot of crazy people.
It's an opportunity for Doctor Who fans to get together and meet one another, discuss the program. Everyone has their favorite Doctor or their favorite companion. No one ever agrees on anything, but that's part of the variety of the program. I like them all. I've had the opportunity to see all of them, but I would say Tom Baker. He was the first one I ever saw, and I like his insane comedic antics on the program. I just think he's wonderfully humorous, and I think that interjected a lot into the character in that it made him seem more alien. He didn't seem human. He never reacted in a very predictable manner at all, and I love that.
Mine's Peter Davison because I think he was my first.
Colin Baker, the new Doctor, which nobody has seen yet, folks, but he's going to blow your socks off.
My favorite character is Sarah. My favorite character has got to be Harry Sullivan, played by Ian Martin.
Thanks very much indeed. Well, it's nice to see you all. I'm here to answer your questions, really, so fire away. The shooting comes later. We'll have the questions first. Yes, sir, with a B in the hat. What does that stand for? Boston. Can you I'm a bit deaf. Can you... I knew you were going to ask me that. What was it like acting with Terrible? You don't believe me, do you? It was great. We had great times together, actually. Tom and I got on very well, and I better repeat the question for those people who didn't hear it. What was it like acting with Tom Baker? It can be infuriating. I mean, Tom can do weird things and forgets his lines and substitutes something else and leaves you standing there with the wrong cue and stuff like that. But we all used to do that to each other. We got on very well, and Sarah, Liz, and the three of us all... You know, we enjoyed working together, and we had a great time. We used to shout at one another occasionally, but there was never any lasting enmity as a result. You know, it was great. It was lovely. Yes, ma'am. How was I given the job of writing the adaptations? Yeah, it just seems to surprise everybody. I don't know why. They're not that bad, are they? Well, Tom and I had been working on a film idea for a movie, a Doctor Who movie, and it didn't come to anything. And well, the script did, but the money didn't come. So, and that's the anything of filmmaking. So, when we realised it wasn't going to happen, Tom said to me, "Why don't you write some of these adaptations?" And I had read a bit of one, and thought, well, I can write this better than this. I'm not going to tell you which one it was, but and so I submitted one, sort of a couple of chapters, and Terry Dix introduced me to the publishers, and they asked me to do one, and I did The Ark in Space, and then, because I changed the end of it, they asked me to do the next one. So I did the Sontaran Experiment, and then they asked me to do some after that, and that's really how it got going. Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Did I what? Any of my own stunts. I didn't really have any stunts to do, to be honest, did I? I mean, Harry never really had anything very sort of dangerous to do. Terry Walsh, he jumped down a few holes for me occasionally, and that sort of thing. I used to do most of it, yes, most of the time. I did fall on my head once, which explained the subsequent kind of worsening of Harry's condition. On Dartmoor. that same time as Tom broke his collarbone, in fact. Not the same day, but the same during the Sontaran experiment. Yes, most of the time we did our own thing. Liz did a famous episode in a boat which nearly drowned her in some cave. And she nearly got carried away on an underground river. She wouldn't have actually got out of it, so she was very lucky. Well, we were all very lucky that she got out of it. And there is actually a piece of tape of her fast disappearing towards this hole. And then suddenly all these people emerged, frogmen and things from all directions, and rescued her. It's quite dramatic, actually. Yes, sir? My favourite episode? You mean story or episode? Because you've used different words to us, don't you? Do you mean actual one story? Honestly, I don't have a favourite. There were favourite things about different ones. You know, I mean, Sontaran experiment was poured with rain the whole time, although it doesn't show so much on videotape. So it doesn't look quite so obvious that it's actually pissing with rain all the way through it. And people fell over and hurt themselves and that sort of thing. Got very wet. And it was also very cold doing the Loch Ness Monster. We all froze. I think Liz wrapped newspaper under her clothes for that some of the time. It was freezing, you know. But I don't know, I just have very nice, happy memories of a lot of the things, but I don't have really a favourite. I have some unfavourite things, but I'm not going to tell you what they are. Yes? This seems to have worried you over here. What was my reaction when he called me an imbecile? Well, he wasn't calling me an imbecile, he was calling Harry Sullivan an imbecile, which I thought was very appropriate. Because he was an imbecile. So you have to. It's the thing about acting is you have to stand back from the character you're playing. It's very dangerous to identify yourself too closely with the character. But you see people do it. I mean, you see that on the movies, and you read about some people who are in movies and stuff, and some of those people are walking around being the characters they play. That's a big mistake. You have to keep you have to be very well aware that that's a different person. It's not you. I don't know how Harry reacted to it. He wouldn't talk to me afterwards. So I don't know what happened. Yes, sir. Why did I leave the show? Because I got the sack. Basically. I didn't leave it. I was contracted to do 26 episodes. And I did my 26 episodes. Well, I'd actually done 24 of them, I think. And they realized they'd paid me. They had to pay me for 2 more. So they put me in Android Invasion, which was not a very happy experience. I didn't enjoy doing that. I thought it was a shame that Harry finished up. The last you saw of him was sitting tied up on the floor, from what I remember. Looking like even more of an idiot. Yes, sir. How did I feel when the BBC asked me to return? Very grateful, because I didn't have any money and I was out of work. You mean from the time when I'd been in the other story with John Pertwee? Well, I wasn't sure. I mean, I had actually been, this is a great story about people being ill, but I had actually been very ill. I'd been in hospital for 3 months. And I had just come out. And I was not well still, really. This is not meant to be a sob story to get sympathy. And I got phoned up by my agent, and he said they'd like to see you for a new character they want to bring into Doctor Who. And so I went along, still not feeling very well and confident, and they talked to me about it, and I thought, well, I didn't know whether I was going to be able to do this. And it was good, because in a way, it gave me something to get started off with again, so in a way, it was really good. So I was pleased, obviously. Yeah. Would I go back to playing Harry if they improved him? No, I don't think so. I think the time that, I mean, everything runs its course, you know, you get to the end of the thing and that's it. I think people should learn when it's time to stop and not try and start up again unless it's a really good reason. You have to be a very different character anyway now, I mean, 10 years later. The Brigadier, they did it quite successfully with. I think they had him as a retired schoolmaster. He became a schoolmaster, didn't he, or something? I think Nick quite planted himself as a retired schoolmaster. Yes?
Do you have a favourite monster?
Do I have a favourite monster? The BBC Accounts Department manager. Not really, no. I have unfavourite ones. I'm not terribly fond of Daleks. They irritate me. I feel like kicking them over. I can never understand why somebody doesn't creep up behind them and put a blanket over. Well, I think people have done that. Put a blanket over their heads. You know, with all their amazing technology, you'd think they'd have been arranged for themselves to have eyes in the backs of their heads. So no, I don't really have any favourite ones. But some of them were very funny. I mean, those things, those Zygons, where they pulled Zygons, which had zips up the back. Because people have to get in and out of those costumes, and the only usual way is through with a zip fastener. And they were very funny because they used to burst open occasionally.
I like it because it shows off some basic values. I mean, everyone would love to go gallivanting through time and space, correcting wrongs that haven't been righted. Everyone's got that in them. They'd like to do it.
I like that because it takes you away from the thought of any reality around here, and it lets you think about things going on other planets, and gives you ideas like planets might be there with other life forms on it. People might think that. I like it. It's also funny too.
It also makes you believe that you too can be the Doctor and go on travels in time and space, your own TARDIS.
Okay, I like Doctor Who because it's the kind of a show that you can just kind of let your imagination run wild. It's kind of like radio was back in the old days. It's kind of done cheaply, but you let your imagination kind of fill in everything.
Doctor Who is a more human show. It deals more with the emotions of the people. I mean, there's a comedy aspect to it, there's a serious aspect to it, and it's all balanced very well. It isn't like several other shows done back in the 60s where it's done straight forward and just man against monster. There's always a theme behind the show.
I like science fiction, and I think Doctor Who is one of the better types of science fiction. The monsters and special effects aren't the greatest, but the acting and the storylines are really superb.
What was the thing I liked most about doing Doctor Who? Well, for an actress, 2 years of solid work is quite unusual. You're usually skipping from one thing to the other, so it was quite nice to have a job for 2 years for a start. Also, and I think I repeat this quite a lot, is that I had 2 years of a lot of fun, and I enjoyed working with Peter and Janet and Matthew and Mark and everybody in the programme, even the guest artists that came into the single stories. I enjoyed working with everybody, and I think it's the fun I had and the friends I made that made my 2 years most enjoyable, really. What was my favourite episode? My favourite story, I have a couple. I think Black Orchid's probably one of my favourites. It was obviously because I had more to do. And I liked the story. I think it was really nice to have a change right in the middle of the season from the general science fiction theme. Earthshock I enjoyed a lot. I think it was a good story, and I think it was particularly well written. And Terminus, I suppose, my last story. A lot of memories from my last story, and I think that's probably one of my favourites too. What's a jelly baby? You don't have jelly babies here. No? They're vile. I have to say, I don't like them. they're about this big, and they're shaped like dolls, and they're standing. And they're made of... What's Jell-O? That's the question. Jell-O. Gelatine. Well, that's like that. It's like a Jell-O baby. About this big. And they come in all sorts of flavours, orange and lime and lemon and things, and they're horrid.
You to leave before the show,
Was it up for me to leave the show?
Yeah, on the 25th anniversary.
Before the 20th anniversary? Yeah, yes it was. My contract finished before the 5th Doctor story, that was important. And I decided before then that if I was asked to renew the contract, that I wouldn't. So it was time for me to move on to something else and to have a change. But at the same time, John Nathan Turner decided that it was time for a new character and that Mr. should perhaps leave the show. So it worked very well because it was a mutual decision between the two of them. I'm Doctor Who. I've been working a lot in television and in the business before I started Doctor Who, so Doctor Who wasn't my first part. I was sent to the part of Mr. and Doctor Who by my agent, and I went along to BBC to meet John Black and John Nathan Turner, which I did, and I read a bit of the script to keep tracking for them. And then a few days later, my agent phoned and said, "You got the part." But I didn't realise then that my part would carry on. I thought it was just for keeper of tracking. But I started work when I started professionally when I was 9 years old in the business. It was my first television when I was 11 years old. So I've done quite a bit of work before Doctor Who. Why the costume changes? I was getting a bit bored with my velvet trousers and my velvet jacket, and the summer was coming along. You know, John Nathan Turner decided that Janet and I always used to complain, you know, because we used to say it's not fair. Romani used to change costumes every week. She wore something different, and Janet and I were stuck in the same old thing. We used to get really fed up about it. So I think John finally got fed up with our complaints and decided that we should change. And then I changed then in snake dance to what Peter Davison used to call my McDonald's outfit. He used to come up to me in the morning and say, "I'll have a Big Mac and a milkshake, please." And not many people like that costume. So John Nathan Turner then decided that change into the suede, the grey suede, which I wore in my last story. What's the most annoying thing people have ever well filmed? I don't think so. There's nothing really annoying. I'm trying to think. That's a good question. I've never been asked that before. Annoying. I don't think there is anything annoying in everything. No, I can't answer that one. I don't have any annoying habits. He used to wear jeans in rehearsal that were always a bit baggy around his bottom, and Janet used to call him Lucky Bum.
What I would now like, please, is some questions from you. Yes, gentleman in front.
Yeah. How did you, when you found out how long Tom Baker's scarf was going to be, how did you cope with that?
Well, I remember being around on the morning that Tom went to look for his costume. It didn't actually affect me very much, you see, because I think all I put in the script that he's dressed in casual bohemian clothes. It's the job of the costume department to find that, to come up with the clothes, and I think Tom went and kind of rooted about and found things that he liked and threw them together, and then they formalized it. There is a story about the scarf, which I believe to be true, and that is that when it was decided that the Doctor should wear a scarf, they hired a lady who was, so to speak, a professional hand knitter. You know, she knitted things for a living. And they chose the pattern and the colour, and they sent her the wool. In case she had any mistakes or problems or lost some, they sent her about 3 times as much wool as she needed. But not realizing this, the lady went on knitting and knitting and knitting, so her supply of wool was exhausted, and then this enormous scarf was delivered back at the BBC and draped round Tom, and everybody fell about with laughter and said, "Hey, how ridiculous," and then they said, "Wait a minute, you know, that's not a bad idea." And I think that, you know, very little on Who happens through planning and working it out and that kind of thing. Things just, you know, turn up out of the blue, and I think that's what happened with the scarf. Yeah, someone else. At the back, yeah, gentleman there. I was responsible for creating the master together with Barry Letts, who was then the producer on the show. The reason behind it was that at the beginning of every season, we would try to come up with a new gimmick, with a new something that would surprise or startle the viewers and give that season a good lift. Like one year we brought back the Daleks after a kind of a long layoff, you know, that was something we did. And we were sitting around, you know, in pursuit of this, you see, you have many long and earnest working discussions over bottles of wine in the BBC bar, sort of, you know, in the pursuance of your duties, you see. And over one of these long discussions, we were talking about the general character of the Doctor and the fact that in many ways he's rather like Sherlock Holmes. He's got a lot in common with Sherlock Holmes. And we thought, what does a Sherlock Holmes need? He needs a Professor Moriarty, you see, and that is quite unashamedly the inspiration for the Master. He's Moriarty to the Doctor Sherlock Holmes. Then I came up with the name of the Master, which is, you know, a good kind of arrant. We felt he should have a title like the Doctor, but not necessarily, you know, something like the Professor. That would have been too close. The Master has the overtones of conceit and arrogance and that kind of thing, and at several points I think at different times in the show, the Doctor says rather scathingly he likes to be known as the Master, which kind of sums up his character. And as soon as we got that basic concept there, Barry Letts, who's the producer, said, and I know exactly the actor to play him, Roger Delgado, who was an old friend of his and has a long history in English films of playing villains. Like many people who play villains, like Boris Karloff, he is, in fact, was, bless him, because he's gone now, he was the kindest and nicest and sweetest man in the world to work with, but he did have this wonderful ability for playing black-hearted fiends, you see. And so it all started from there, and he at once became immensely popular. I mean, at the end of the show, where, at the end of the last one in which he's captured, the demons, is not, yeah, the director of the show wanted the people in the village who were used as extras to boo as the Master was kind of taken into captivity, and they all cheered, you know. He's obviously got a lot of fans out there, and he was meant at first to become a regular character, but we found after we'd done a whole season with the Master, the fact it was always going to be turn out to be the Master in disguise at the end was harder and harder to conceal. That was one thing. It also raised the question, if the Doctor is so brilliant and the Master is so brilliant, how come the Doctor is always trying to catch the Master and muffs it, and how come the Master is always trying to kill the Doctor and he muffs it as well, you know? And that got less and less convincing. So what we did, and I think it was a good decision, was to make him a semi-regular, so that once in every season, in the second or the third or the fifth story, the Master would come, and that was always a great moment, you know, when you could give him an entrance then, you know, rather like the entrance I tried to give Anthony Ainley in The Five Doctors, when, you know, they're all sitting around on Gallifrey saying, he has got to come and help us, we must send for him. And you are, I think, hoping, at least some of you, that it's going to be the Doctor, and in comes the Master. You know, that was a great... Anthony loved that, you know, he was really, he really enjoyed doing that, and he really liked his bit in it. Writing was not very different. I think I wrote the character the same. Anthony is perhaps a little more flamboyant and more theatrical than Roger was. Roger was quieter and sober, yet in some ways more menacing, but the difference in performance was really more in the actor than the lines. Right, that's a long answer to a long question. Somebody else. Yes, sir. How do I come up with ideas? That's, you know, that's the $64 question or the $64,000 question. I don't know. I think nobody knows. There comes a time ideas float up out of your mind, and you look at them and say, yeah, well, maybe, and they go back again. And if they're any good, they float up again, and they become a kind of a persistent thing. And that's the hardest thing to do, and it's the thing you can't put a kind of time frame on. For instance, when I was writing The Five Doctors, again, because that's all freshest in my mind, I knew a lot of things about the show. I knew it had to have all the Doctors in, I knew it had to have various companions and various monsters, but I didn't really have an idea that would tie the whole thing together. And then I suddenly got this picture in my mind of a black-gloved hand reaching forward with a little model of the Doctor and placing it on some kind of board. And that actually is the show. That whole image is the show. That's what it's all about. Once I got that, it was plain sailing. I could think, right, it's a game. Somebody's playing a game. Somebody's stealing the Doctors out of space and time. Then it was a matter of working through permutations of plot and character and whatever. But it was that central image which is kind of, in a sense, the really creative part. The thing about Doctor Who is that it's kind of oral history, I believe. I mean, I don't know, but I've been told that on Star Trek they had like a Bible in which everything was written down, and everybody could refer to the background and the setup, and they would, you know, they wouldn't kind of make the Klingons good guys in one story or anything like that, you see. That has never happened on Doctor Who. I mean, we go on in our kind of slap-happy British way, making up a bit here and a bit there, and a lot of different people over the years have worked on Who, and So conflicting story, you know, sometimes people haven't been as careful as they should have been, and you will get conflicting versions of the same story. On the other hand, if you think about that, if you go back far enough into human history, you will also get conflicting versions of what happened at the Battle of Hastings, or whether Richard III was a good king or a villainous king, and all kinds of stuff like that. So I would like to say, you know, that it's a rather cunning answer, that this gives a dimension of reality to the show, you know, that things are not always the same, not always reliable. Yeah. No, the basic process is that the script is worked on and got together by the producer, the script editor, and the writer. In other words, the writer writes the script under the control and direction of the script editor. And at that point, the director joins and is given the scripts. And he goes away and reads them. And I always used to say, actually, we had a routine, you know, like day one, director given the scripts. Day two, director comes back and says scripts are totally impossible. You know, that's the routine. We always do that, you know. And the director, who is the one who has to realize the show, will kind of make comments and ask for changes or practical changes or whatever, but basically he doesn't initiate, he interprets the script that's already there. That's what his job is. Yep, who's there? This whole question of names, I think you know, it's hard to remember I've written so many books now, but my concept of the names is quite clear, which is that the real personal name of a Time Lord is kind of a secret which will be known to only a few people and to his intimates perhaps, and which he would not use in everyday life. It's rather like the concept that some primitive tribes have, you know, in anthropology, that if you know a person's name, you have a grip on their soul in some strange way, you see. And I thought it was rather nice that this kind of piece of superstition should be in Time Lord lore. So they would have various titles and names and numbers and Greek symbols or whatever. But the real name is a secret, and, you know, will probably never be told. That's what I think, anyway. But as I was saying in Doctor Who, there's no Bible, you know, so your guess is as good as mine.
Scarf I made myself, actually. I had some help. Actually, my mom made most of it. Okay, I helped here and there, you know. More or less put it together over time. Got some fabric crayons, put question marks on my lapels. I try and make it as authentic as possible.
I dressed up as the second Doctor, the Patrick Troughton incarnation. The jacket is actually an antique. I got it from I found out my brother had one of these, and it was perfect with the costume. And the second Doctor always wore the real yucky type plaid pants, and you know, up above his ankles. And he dressed up almost as bad as the fourth Doctor. And of course the recorder that he always played. Everybody calls it a flute, and he always gets indignant. Well, the flute is a recorder.
This convention, I decided to go as a Cyberman. He's my favorite villains, and it took me about a week or so to try and make the mask as best I could.
In terms of time I made a big set with the costume, how did I deal with it? I was quite relieved, actually, not to have to do this before every take. To make sure nothing was hanging out that shouldn't be. But that little flap was my idea, by the way. That wasn't on the original costume. So any of you little lookalikes, you have me to thank for the flap at the back. Yeah. Yes, please. You know, in England, it's basically a children's show over there. It's shown, thank you very much. It's shown late afternoon, early evening. So when you do the autograph sessions, there was one autograph session where Tom and I did, I think, something like 2,500 to 3,000 autographs. And that was a long afternoon too. And all the children wait in line, and something up to 2 hours, 2.5 hours, I mean longer. They were there for ages. And they're clutching their jelly baby, ready to give you, right? So this sweaty, juicy jelly baby is presented to you. and this little pair of eyes just peeping over the table, waiting for you to eat it. I was so sick that night. I mean, how can you refuse, you know? I mean, and every adult says, I bet you got writer's cramp, huh? So you're going, jelly baby writer's cramp, jelly baby writer's cramp. 2,500 people. When I was working with K9, was it difficult working with something mechanical instead of something human, yeah?
Not that, but, you know, with the lines, them coming from...
Oh, well, what they did, they fixed up a microphone so that it was as if the voice was coming out of K9, which was all right. But we were lucky in as much as the BBC had this ridiculous system whereby they hire their own props, right? So, I think it's stupid too. So they hire the makeup people, they hire the wardrobe people, they hire the studio, and they hire the camera off themselves. They couldn't afford, they had to employ 10 people to work out the system. We couldn't afford to have K9 in the rehearsal room, because there's lovely John Neeson running around on all fours. Yeah, he said it's the only voiceover he's done where he's had to take a shower afterwards. But it actually enabled the actors to strike up a very genuine relationship with K9, because we had all that rehearsal experience to draw on. Once we got into the studio and the mechanical dog appeared, it was still as if John was there. I really missed him, actually. Tom thought he should get done up in a dog's outfit and, you know, really be the K9. It should have been fun. He lost a K9 sound-alike contest. And I was in St. Louis last week. I couldn't believe it. He was terribly embarrassed.
What was the funniest thing that happened to you while you were playing Doctor Who?
What was the funniest thing that happened to me when I was playing Doctor Who? That's quite difficult, because what's funny then is not so funny in retrospect. It's like those lovely drunken evenings you have, and you start relating it to your friends and they go, really? But I think the most dramatic thing that ever happened was nearly killing a cameraman. So I had a sharp knife until then they gave me a double blunt one. I had this knife, I think it was Robots of Death. I had to fling at a robot and hit the robot, and I misfired. The camera's about there, robot's about there, and I missed. Poor cameraman. And on take 2, the entire studio had moved behind me. Except for one poor, quaking little cameraman. Yes. The most memorable thing about playing the part of it, freezing to death in November, on top of a cigarette factory in Bristol. So Tom Baker, I got his scarf and wrapped myself up in it, and then he used to whisk it away when the take came and I'd be ready to go. It was the only thing that kept me warm.
What was it like working with Tom Baker?
What was it like working with Tom Baker? It's a favourite question, isn't it? He has the most extraordinary energy of any actor I've ever worked with, I think, which can have its pros and its cons. It's if he gets an idea about something, then he never lets go of it, which is really good, because he'll fight any kind of bureaucracy for the sake of the programme, and I mean for the sake of the programme. On the other hand, if he doesn't like a particular line, it's not unknown for the script to be thrown out the window, you know. So, poor little assistant floor managers trotting downstairs, picking it up, putting it back together, coming upstairs. Then we can get on with rehearsal. So, I mean, it's never boring, is what I would say. Yes. Yes.
Have you ever been offered any parts in Doctor Who now?
Have I been offered any parts in Doctor Who now? Okay. John Nathan Turner phoned me up, this was before Tom left, and said that he wanted to talk to me, but it was secret and he couldn't do it over the phone. So I came rushing down to London. I thought, this is wonderful, I'm going to have a new series built around me or something. He's just become a producer. So I swanned round the BBC, where I hadn't been for about 18 months, saying hello darling to everyone, because I couldn't remember anybody's name. And it was to ask if I would go back into the series for a full season, because he wanted to tide over a companion. Oh, I'm sorry, am I boring you? Oh. They wanted to tide over a companion, so the fans had some kind of security while they changed the Doctor. But I said I'd go back for half a season, but not a full season. But that wasn't on, unfortunately. But at the end of my lunch with John Nathan Turner, which consisted of a slimline tonic and a packet of peanuts, he, some guy in the bar, I'd been swanning around for maybe an hour and a half, tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Did you know your dress is tucked into your knickers?" Oh. I nearly died. I just wanted the floor to open up and swallow me. Yes.
What did you do to get into character for Leela?
What did I do to get into character for Leela? Well, the stories written by Robert Holmes were quite easy to follow because he devised the character. He'd written very nicely for her, so I could just concentrate on the script. But some of the other scripts were rather more difficult to hold on to the character. Time and time again I was finding things that said Leela screams, and no, Leela doesn't scream. Leela has, you know, to get a knife out or save the doctor here, or, you know, just to hold on to the guts of the woman. But I thought she's a mixture of naivety and aggression and instinct. So I based her on the little girl that lived upstairs then called Sally, who was all of 4 years old and very short-tempered, and my dog called Bosie. So I muddled the two in together, and there you have Leela.
For the memory of
Here's a show on TV 12 in which you were one of the stars. The Doctor Is In Philadelphia, featuring many of the Doctor Who stars and the Doctor Who fans of the Delaware Valley just like you. We hope you enjoyed it, and we hope you enjoyed it enough that you might get up out of that easy chair right now and make a pledge of support to TV 12 to keep the Doctor Who shows coming for a long time. You've got another chance now, right here in our studios at 215-923-1234. I'm Ed Cunningham of the TV 12 staff, and we really enjoyed putting together this Doctor Who special right here